You know what? Let's get started. And if they come, they come. If, we'll let them in.
All right. Well, thank you for those that are joining. Today with us, we have Darrin Evans of the VLC Center, who's going to be talking about creating accessible PDFs. Darrin, it's all you.
All right. Thanks, Emily. And thank y'all for coming. So we're going to talk about the basics of PDF accessibility. If we were really doing a PDF accessibility class, that will take a couple of days actually, or actually you could do it in a day, about 4 hours or so. But I'm going to introduce you to the basics of it and show you just a little bit of tricks on creating accessible PDF files. We're going to watch a short PowerPoint. I think it's only 7 or 8 slides, 8 slides, I think. Just to give you a little bit of background. And if you already know this, consider it a review. If you don't, it'll be, more information for you. So let's get started. This is going to be creating those accessible PDF files. All right, so today we're going to talk about exporting files for maximum accessibility. We're going to use the automated accessibility tools in Acrobat. So there's basically 2 ways to sort of make things accessible in Acrobat. And then we're going to talk about tagging content. Now, the first thing we want to start with, and one of the major problems that I run into, or we run into with PDF accessibility, is people don't really understand creating accessible Word documents. So the easiest way to create an accessible PDF is to start with a good source document that's accessible. And usually that's Word. Word is the best avenue to get there. So we try to start with an accessible structured Word document, and then we simply convert that to PDF. If we do that, for the most part, we're going to have to do some tweaks. For the most part, we'll get a fairly accessible PDF file from that. So we're going to use the check accessibility tool in Acrobat, and then we're going to use the make accessible action wizard. And then we'll tag documents and we'll look at reading order. So those are the kind of things that we're going to do today. So what are tags? Tags are they're metadata. The tags won't be seen on your document. They're strictly for screen readers. They let screen readers know that, this is a paragraph. This is a heading, maybe a heading level 1 through 6. This is a list. This is a form, or this is a table. And that way it makes it a little bit easier for the screen reader to read what's there. Another thing we're going to have to label is alternative text. So alternative text helps us with 2 things, really. It helps us make images available to people who can't see them. And it gets us to think about, are our images truly adding value? So I've always made this argument that in higher education, we only really use images for 3 reasons. There are only 3 ways we really use images. They're either content, so there's something we want students to learn or know. They're decoration, they're just there to break up the structure of a page, or they're an example of something. And when I say content, I don't always mean it's something that you're trying to teach necessarily. I was talking to a lady at a college, and she said, I never post any content on my images. And I asked her what she did. She was in financial aid, and she had an infographic of, how to apply for financial aid. I said, well, that's content, right? You could argue that's some of the most important content at this college. Now, I could talk to you for hours about alt text and what makes good alt text and bad alt text, but we're not going to do that. So I'm going to give you an example in the next slide And we're going to talk about just some generalities when it comes to alt text and how to create it. So, this is just an image. I mean, is that a cute kid? Doesn't matter, right? At all. That's not an important part of the context. I have to say that kid is cute because he's mine, but nobody else does. So the key points for alternative text, and there's a reason I chose this image specifically. It's one of my favorites. And also the alt text for this image and the image description would change depending on what the context was, right? So the context is key. Who's the audience for this image at all? I need to be concise. What do I really want to say about this image? I want to be objective. Like, it doesn't matter if that's a cute kid or not. It's if I'm talking about Halloween costumes for 8-year-old children, then I would describe the costume, not even really the child at all. So it depends on what I'm doing. Is it a flyer for a Halloween party at a community group? So it depends on who's seeing this image. What is this image for? So the alt text for this, I just said young boy in a vampire costume with fangs, because that was really the only thing I was trying to convey here. So the point is that the alt text will change depending on what the context is. And remember, I was saying that we really only use images for those 3 reasons. They're decoration, they're an example of something, or they're actual, real content that we want people to have and to see. So next, we're going to do a demo of what we've talked about, or basic demos of how to create accessible PDFs or how to get started. We won't go over everything with PDFs because just honestly, tables, if we talk about tables and forms, which a lot of us use, are very, they're not difficult, they're very cumbersome. So I'm going to show you I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. Are there any questions on what we've done so far? If not, I'm going to open up.
Yeah, not seeing anything in the chat, but everyone does have capabilities to speak if they need to.
So if you need to speak, hey, you can interrupt me at any time. If I say something that doesn't quite make sense or I go too fast, you can certainly interrupt me at any time. All right, what I'm going to do now is we're going to start with that first concept that I mentioned, which is you want to start, anytime you're doing a PDF, you want to start with a structured, accessible Word document. So you want a good source document. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up a file for you and I'll share it with you in just a second. And we'll talk about this concept of starting with that structured, accessible Word document and how we, might want to do that. So as you can see, I have a Word document here, and this is Lunch and Learn. This was, it's on Baja Fish Tacos, okay? So what I'm going to do here, can everybody see this document?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I started with this. I added alt text to this image. I have a paragraph, I have a list, and then at the bottom I have a website where you can go see sort of the history of tacos. So again, I chose tacos. It's a ridiculous subject. I understand that. I'm just trying to show you the techniques. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the accessibility of this document because it's my source document. I want to make sure that I have alt text here, that I haven't done anything that's going to make this document inaccessible. Because if it is inaccessible now, it's definitely going to be inaccessible when I transfer it over to the PDF format. So I'm going to go to review here and I'm going to check accessibility. And it says I had no accessibility issues found. And I got the green check mark, but I want to say something real quickly about automated accessibility tools. They are not perfect. They miss stuff, miss things. So don't rely just on the accessibility checker to tell you something is accessible or not. The software cannot make judgments. It cannot do nuance. It isn't able to like check color contrast, as you'll see in just a minute. So I'm pretty happy. I've eyeballed it. I've run the accessibility checker. I'm pretty happy that this is an accessible document. So I'm fine with that. I'm going to go to my home tab here. And since I have Acrobat Pro, and this only really to make accessible PDFs, you've got to have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro. There are other accessibility readers, but they're not quite strong enough or robust enough to create accessible PDF files. So I'm going to create just a regular PDF out of this accessible Word document here. It's going to ask me to save that, and I will. It's got my folder, and it's converting this to a PDF. So now let's talk about tagging, and let's look at PDF here. So this is our tools panel over here. And I'm going to get rid of some of these tools. I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to remove some shortcuts. And this is just the way I like to do it. And it's always important to remember, I'm showing you a way, not the way. So I like having that scan and OCR tool. So that's if you have like a journal article and you want to scan something and look at it. It's a picture. The scan and OCR, what that does is that'll scan that document and it'll try to make sense of the fonts, the paragraphs, that sort of thing. You don't want to run this unless you really have a scanned document. I have the action wizard and accessibility, and I'm going to go to more tools here to add another tool. And I'm looking for prepare form because I do forms sometimes. So in general, just to get out of that, I only use these 4 tools, but that's just for me. You have ones you can add. Your workflow may be completely different than what I'm doing here. So there's a couple of ways we can create an accessible PDF form. So we'll go over both of them. I'm going to show you the one that sort of holds your hand and walks you through it first. So if I click on this action wizard right here, and I click Make Accessible, it's going to walk me through each of the steps to make this an accessible PDF file. Oh, pro tip, I forgot. I've been doing this so long that it's almost automatic for me. When it says recognize text using OCR, you want to right click and skip this step. Okay, you want to skip that. You want to skip that step. Okay, so we're going to make this accessible, but we want to make sure that we do not do the OCR, because what that's going to do, if we go that step, it's going to scan this document, and then it's going to create a picture of it and what it's going to put as the text in our document is not going to be what we've really done. It's not going to be nowhere near as close or as accurate as what we've actually created through this accessible document. So let's just go through it. We're going to go, it's going to say add document description. So I'm going to just go title. I'm just going to go Baja Fish Tacos. Subject, I'm going to put demo because this is just a demo of some accessibility features. I'll leave myself as the author. And keywords, I'm not going to type any keywords in here. I'm just going to leave as is. I'm going to leave those blank. But if you're creating documents for your college, you do want to type keywords in there. One thing that the keywords does behind the scenes is if you have students who are looking for certain documents and they type, search terms into the documents, what happens is those keywords help index those search terms. So your students can find things a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. So, I'm not going to do it in this case, but that's something that you would probably do. So I'm going to click OK. So it gives me a check mark, says you've got that done. I don't have any form fields. So I'm going to skip this step. So set tab order. So as you can see, I just go through each of these steps and it walks me right through it. I'm not going to auto tag document. I'm going to skip that step. It's asking me about my alternative text. I'm going to click OK. It says there's no figures with missing alternative text. Because remember, as we did the Word document, I put the alternative text in there. Well, you didn't see that, but as we ran the accessibility checker, it didn't flag me as missing alt text. So that alt text copied over to the PDF. So we're good with that. And then the last thing it's going to tell me to do is, run the accessibility check. So I'm going to run a full accessibility check. So when I click on it, it says, hey, what are the categories you want to, check the accessibility for? Well, I want to check for everything. So I'll leave all these checked. And let's start checking. Now, remember earlier when we first started, I said that these automated accessibility tools would miss things, and they're not the ultimate determination of what is or is not accessible. That's going to be you, a person. Because I don't care how many times we check PDF accessibility, how many times we create accessible Word documents, this automatic accessibility checker is always going to miss two things. It's always going to miss color contrast and reading order, and we'll talk about those in a second, among other things. So it says, check logical reading order, because the software does not know how to check for reading order. And color contrast, it doesn't know how to check for color contrast. So these are really just reminders to you to say, you need to check these things, out, make sure that they're in the proper order, or that they're going to be read in a logical reading order. So those are two things. If you have just those two issues, you're usually pretty good. Now let's talk about tagging. So that's our accessibility checker. Our accessibility checker only caught those two things, which are things that the software just doesn't know what a logical reading order is, right? Machines don't do nuance or make judgments. They just can't. And it can't check color contrast adequately. So it kind of doesn't do those things. So I'm going to close this. So I'm decently happy with the accessibility. And then I'm going to click this tag tree. Okay. And I'm going to go through and make sure that the tags, remember we talked about the tags are what assistive technology reads. That's how it knows what to look at, what's going on, what they're supposed to be saying. It's based on tags. Now those tags aren't visible, of course, in your document. If I send this to Betty, the tags are invisible, right? She won't see tags as she's reading through this document. So I'm just going to click. So I have a section tag. I have an H1 for Baja Fish Tacos. I've got a paragraph here that's not really a paragraph. We'll deal with that in a second. Got the figure, paragraph, 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 paragraph. Then I have a list. If I go down, yeah, you see, one of the things about lists are they're a sort of a parent-child relationship. In other words, the list is the parent, and then you have body, which are the child, right? The children. So that's tinga, carne asada, barbacoa, and al pastor. So I can get rid of those. I just wanted you to see that sort of parent-child relationship. I have a paragraph, and then I have another paragraph. Well, it's just some white space. So I have two paragraphs that aren't really paragraphs, right? I got this one, and I got this one. Okay, so now, as you can see there, I've got some things that are in the tag tree that are mislabeled. They aren't really anything. And it's important to think about it this way. PDFs are sort of layered documents. So they put things in layers. The tags sort of do the layers of the PDF. So sometimes you get things thrown in there that are essentially artifacts. So I'm going to close this accessibility checker. And if I go to accessibility, it's going to ask me, it's going to say check reading order. So I'm going to click on this reading order. All right. And this reading order is a little bit of a misnomer. Okay. Because it puts stuff in numbers here. And, you think, well, this is the first thing that's going to be read. And then the figure is going to be, the fifth thing that's going to be read. But no, that's not how it works. It's going to read this tag tree. It reads the tag tree. That's how it works. So I'm okay with this reading order. I'm not okay with these, these little artifacts I have. So I'll go back to reading order. I'm going to choose this one. And let's see if it'll let me do it. Won't. This is a little bit finicky. Okay, you see I had to choose this 2 times. This little purple thing is that just artifact that was just there. So I want to get rid of it. And I'm going to go up here to reading order. And you may have to do this a couple times. You may have to choose it and choose it again before it'll highlight in purple there. And I'm going to click background artifact. So it disappears. And the other, let's see, that one. Again, I'm going to have to do this a couple of times. I may have to live with this one. Nope, there you go. So you see I had to choose it a couple of times. And it's this one, right? It was mislabeled as a paragraph. So I'm going to go to background artifact and click that. And I've gotten rid of it. Now I'm going to close reading order. And this is one of the things that makes PDFs so finicky. And after you've created a or worked on remediating PDFs and creating accessible PDFs 10 or 20 times, I'll say it like this. I'm a big fan of using EPUBs. And when it comes to forms, I like to use HTML forms. And I think you'll be a big fan of both of those things too, after you make accessible PDFs over and over and over and over again, because it's so finicky and cumbersome. So you saw just getting rid of those background artifacts. We started with an accessible Word document. We copied this Word document over to PDF, and it still gave us errors that we did not create in Word. So you're going to have to go through every time you create a PDF from an accessible Word document. You're going to have to go through reading order. Reading order is a misnomer. It does not read it in those numbers. It reads the tag tree. But what's great about the reading order panel, as you just saw, is it lets us create those background artifacts. So it lets us get rid of things that would throw off the screen reader, so that we now have a nice, clean, pretty document. And we can go through and we can, look at these paragraphs in reading order. And I suspect if you've ever done any HTML, this will look sort of familiar to you. Okay, so again, I'm happy with this. This is a section heading. I mean, let's say I wanted to change this section heading to something else. I didn't like it. It's perfectly fine. I'm going to leave it as, actually, I'll leave it. I'll show you a slightly different way. All right, now I'll show you this way. So I can right click on this tag. I'm going to go down to properties. And it's a section tag. I could change it to, there's like 39 tags, but you're really only going to use about 4 or 5. You're going to use the paragraph tag, the sections tag. You may use table rows, form tags, and lists. That's really about it. I'm not going to change this tag, but I want to show you how you would do that by just selecting the tag, right-clicking and going to properties, and then you could change it to, whatever you want it to. So let's change this one to paragraph. And I'll close that. And then, I don't like that. I'm going to change it back. I'm going to right-click, go to properties, and this is the type. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to change that to it's an alphabetical order. I'm going to change that to a heading 1 and close. So that was showing you how to take an accessible Word document, save it as a PDF, and then the steps you would take to sort of clean it up. We went through the accessibility action wizard. We use the action wizard, and I'd recommend you use the action wizard simply because it walks you through sort of each step. Now, as you just saw, it walked us through each step, but we still had to clean up some things. So next, I'm going to show you how to do it the wrong way, okay? Well, in this case, what I consider the wrong way. So you've looked at these tags. Everything looks pretty good. I got rid of all that extraneous stuff that I didn't need. I'm happy with the list. Paragraph, I'm good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto tag this document, and I want you to look at the difference that we're going to see. And again, this is just so that you can see that automated accessibility tools have to be used sort of carefully, right? I have a saying that the tool is only as good as the mechanic, and sometimes I'm not a good mechanic. So I'm going to auto tag this document. It's going to say, hey, wait a minute. This document's already tagged. Are you sure you'd like to retag this document? And I'm going to say yes. And then I'm gonna go to this thing right down here. So once you auto tag, it creates a report. Or if you run the accessibility check, it creates a report, which honestly, I never read. So you have this last little thing here. It looks like a shopping tag, something you'd see on some clothes at the mall. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see right away, right? It's got H3 for, this was the auto tagging, right? Not the tagging that I did in Word. Well, obviously this is a section title. That's not an H3, it's an H1. So you're almost always, when you auto tag, if you've created an accessible Word document and you come over to PDF and you run that action wizard, you're usually going to have a fairly decently accessible PDF. If you run that auto tag, it just doesn't work that well, right? It's just the software is just not that good. So I've got to obviously change that. So I'm going to right click, go down to properties. I'm going to change that heading level 3. That should be a heading level 1. And you can see it changes there. Remember, this says part, when really this should be a section tag. So I'm going to right click on this one, go to properties, and I'm going to turn that into a section tag. Close that. And then let's go through, again, this is called our tag tree right here. And this is how it's going to be read by a screen reader. So we're just going to, sort of tab through, make sure that it's in that logical reading order. So to read the H1, the figure, paragraph. Okay, so I don't like this now. It's, as you can see, it's got this as part of the figure, which this is not a figure. So what I'm going to do is, I want this to be, I want this, that it's labeling as the figure. Oh, it's got it as a caption. The whole thing is really a caption. I don't think that's a caption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that around, and I'll make that, I'll go to properties. I'm going to label that a paragraph. And then I'll change it. Okay. So that's auto tagging. Auto tagging is not something I would recommend you use unless you have an OCR. Say you've got like an old journal article and you have to do the scan in OCR to get it where you can, grab the text, you can look at it. Because when you scan an OCR, a lot of these old journal articles, they're just actually pictures. So that scan in OCR sort of recognizes the words, the paragraphs, the fonts, that kind of thing. So really that's the only time I would ever use auto tag, is if I'm scanning something. Other than that, I would never, ever use auto tag. And I wanted to show you that, to show you how that perfectly tagged document we had when we ran auto tag, how it sort of messed it up. Now let's talk about going through and remediating a PDF that you already have or PDF that someone else gave you. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to open another PDF. I'm going to open this one that says Mongolia. And we'll look at this one. We'll look at the tag tree. Okay, so this one has no tags available, right? Now, I just told you I would never auto tag. unless like this, it's a scanned OCR document. So I'm gonna go to accessibility here, and I'm gonna auto tag this document. Again, it's gonna run a report for me, which I never read. And I'm gonna click off of that. I'm gonna look at these tags now. All right, so there are my tags. I scanned this, well, I didn't scan it. This was scanned, and then I OCR'd it, and that's why I ran those auto tags. So let's just see if we can, go through here. This says style spec. Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely change these. So this is how cumbersome it is to create accessible PDFs. This is why I recommend EPUBs. However, I'm not delusional. I know that in higher education, we are never, ever going to get rid of PDFs. That is just never going to happen. But we can limit them, right? We can limit the amount of PDFs that we use. So what I'm going to go through now is just have to, go to the properties. I'm going to have to change some of these. So I have a dilemma here. And again, there are no hard and fast rules here. Sometimes creating accessible PDFs is art. Sometimes it's science. Just to get some class participation, what would you change this word culture to? Would you change it to a paragraph, a heading? What would y'all do? Unmute yourselves and give me some advice. I need your help. Anybody? Bueller? Is this thing still on?
Everyone should have opportunity to come off the chat if they want.
All right, so
Whether use microphone.
Yeah, I'm up to. Okay, I think I saw Amy Holmes here. Amy, what would you do?
Oh no, I got called on. Okay, what I'm choosing which
Yeah, you can
type for.
Yeah, you're choosing which tag you can make this. There are no right or wrong answers.
To make what though?
This word culture, right?
The word culture.
Yeah, it's a style span, but I don't like that. So I want to change it to something else. What would you do?
It's an image, right? So I don't know.
Let's change it to image. Okay, yeah, we can change that to figure. Remember I said there's really no right or wrong answers here, and style spans don't have alt text, but images do, figures do. So the alt text will just type the word culture. So Amy was 100% right. That was one way to do it. I could also go here and again, that would work perfectly fine. I could also go to properties. I could have changed that into maybe a heading. Maybe not. I could have changed that into a paragraph. It just depends. That's the way Amy did it was perfectly correct. She was correct. Sorry to put you on the spot like that, Amy. I'm sorry about that, but
No problem.
I knew you could handle it, and you came through. I knew you could do it. You can do it. So that was one way to do it. I could have done it with the paragraph here. I could have made that sort of a heading. So there are no really hard and fast rules. And that's what sort of makes or can make PDF accessibility really sort of cumbersome, like here. So again, those are things you're going to have to make your own judgment on, right? So that's why again, I use PDFs very sparingly, but I've done this hundreds of times of making them accessible. And unfortunately, frustration is part of this process, right? I've done it wrong hundreds of times, still do. So after a while, you'll start to develop a second nature for it, or a workflow, or a style that you like. But it's very, very tedious. So I'm not going to go through and change all of them, but you can see I got to change these style spans. I have the word Mongolia here, and that's saying that it's an object. That's fine with me. World edition. All of that is a figure that I would have to do. Section tag, section tag. And again, now let's look through the reading order here, okay? So again, if I go through the reading order, remember that that reading order is a misnomer. It is not going to read. There's no modern screen readers. So that's NVDA, that's JAWS, that's VoiceOver if you're on a Mac. None of them read PDFs by those numbers in reading order. None of them do. They read by whatever's in that tag tree. That's why you have to tag everything in the document, and those tags need to be as accurate as you can make them. So let's go back to the tag tree. The one good thing, or the great thing about the reading order tab and what that can do, is that it allows you to set things as a background artifact. Because PDFs are in layers, there are things that are going to get layered on the top layer when they shouldn't be there. And this allows you, that reading order allows you to get rid of them. So let's go down and see if we have any, what we call, if we have any strays. It looks like actually the OCR did okay here. I don't know how that just happened. But let's say I want to get rid of something anyway. Let's just say there's something on this page I don't like it, I want to get rid of it. Okay. Let's say I want to get rid of this and just have Mongolia, and maybe I'll switch it up, right? I can background artifact that. And the screen reader is not going to read it because it's a background artifact. Let me get rid of those things. So I guess those were artifacts in there. Okay. See, this is the annoying part. I'm getting rid of the same stuff over and over and over again. That's the layers. All right, now, I think I've gotten rid of everything that I want it to. Again, it takes over and over to get rid of these. This is the cumbersome part of PDFs. You know what? This may be 10 more layers, so I'm going to stop. But you saw how that setting those background artifacts, how that can sort of clean up your page a little bit. You want to have things in a logical reading order. If you start off with an accessible Word document and you're converting that over to PDF, you want to make sure you run that action wizard. And that action wizard will walk you through, it'll hold your hand. You want to make sure that when you're running that action wizard, that you skip the step that says OCR, because the OCR that it's going to come up with is not going to be as accurate as what you created in that Word document, right? You want to start with a good, accessible source document. Now, if you would like more training on accessible PDFs, like maybe a hands-on, session at your college, or how to do forms or tables, just contact me and we could, we could do that virtually. We could visit, and we'll really do a deep dive into creating accessible PDFs. I wanted you to see today the basics of how it works. I wanted you to see that Make Accessible Action Wizard and how powerful that is, but that you're still going to have to go back and clean up stuff. And one of the main takeaways that I wanted you to get from today is that you need to start with an accessible source document. If you start with an accessible source document, by accessible source document, we mean Word. If you start with that, creating an accessible PDF becomes much, much, much easier. It just becomes an easier thing to do if you start with that accessible source document. Are there any questions on anything we've done, anything I should review, anything that maybe I went through too fast? You can unmute yourselves and talk. Feel free. I'm not that good a teacher, people, so I know there's got to be some questions or something I maybe perhaps overlooked. Is there something that you wanted to know that I did not cover? Okay, well, that sounds like you got what you needed. I hope everybody learned at least one thing they didn't know today. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you have any questions or something comes up in the next, week or so, let me know. You can email me at, I can't even spell my own name. You can email me at any time about any questions you have on any kind of accessibility topic, any kind of maybe course design thing. If a question comes up, just feel free to email me at any time. Thank you for spending your part of your lunch with me. I really appreciate that. I hope to see some of you soon. Any last questions? Anything you want to know that we did not quite go over? Okay, doesn't sound like it. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Emily, for having me.
Absolutely.
And thank all y'all for coming. And hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Have a good weekend.
Yes.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Darrin, and all. Thank you for joining. This video recording will be up on our YouTube site, hopefully sometime next week if anyone wants to review it again. Thank you all and enjoy your weekend.
Have a good weekend, Emily. Thanks.